This paper was presented at the JCT Traffic Signal Symposium 2024, thanks to our media partner Highways News, and sponsored by AGD Systems, Four-Way Consulting, Traffic Group Signals, Smart Micro UK, TRL Software, PTV Group, Census Networks, and Starling Technologies.
I found myself standing back from the subject we talk about. And over the course of the last 3 days, movie user group these 2 days, we've heard the word traffic a lot. We don't talk about the vehicles quite so much. So let me just take you through a little journey, if I may. This is what all our roads used to look like. That's the Ridgeway. Until these guys came along, and they wanted better mobility, so nothing is new. And they built lots of these. Take note of the lovely name Rudus and also the nucleus. They may appear later on. So, why worry about the roads? Okay, well, 2,000 years on, they could look like this. Or they could look like this, which, interestingly, is Roman. Key point, though, is that roads are basically pretty damn static. They don't get up and move around. You don't get to do much with them very often. They are pretty finite resources. They're the public bits. Now the bits we have to invest in. Now it starts getting a bit more interesting because vehicles change a lot, quickly. How did it get like this? So let's take a look at the traffic. Most of the stuff on our roads is private and light goods. Huge variation. The two-seater with room for a small suitcase can look like this or this. Why the variety? Because we can all, over-toggling, because we can all buy and drive what we want, freedom of choice. Everything changes, nothing stays the same. Everything changes. We have ever more vehicles. So, in 1895, we had one. Now we've got just over 32 million other things. So a lot of vehicles, And although there are lots more of us, we have easier access to them. There's now one vehicle roughly for every 2.16 people in the country. And until Alexis came over from Cyprus and told me that a country of 900,000 people had 750,000 vehicles, which is 1.2 people per vehicle, I thought we were doing quite well. So, yeah, they are very accessible to us now. And we drive them a lot more than we ever used to. Top line is total mileage, GB. This is DFT data. The line that interested me in this is actually the third one down, the pale blue one. It looks innocent in there. But actually, look at how much it's changed from 93 through 2022. I reckon that's roughly doubled. None of the other lines have doubled. Each time you place an order on Amazon, you're responsible for that blue line going up. Those are light commercial vehicles. Those are those white vans that turn up outside your door, fail to deliver, go away, come back again. That's what I reckon anyway. Yep. So, in round numbers, 305 billion vehicle miles. It is actually not a comprehensible number. And a couple of years ago, post-COVID, 325 billion vehicle miles. Okay. In 2016, we had just under 250,000 miles of road. Up 0.25% from the year before. There's a typo in the paper, by the way. And up a massive 2.5% from 1995. 20 years, 2.5%. 6,000 miles more road. The same period, if we go back to the vehicle numbers, we have 50% more vehicles. Just a little bit of reflection on what you guys are dealing with and why it might be quite challenging. That's the sort of traffic overview. Now I want to, it's not there's more to it than that. It's not just that simple. The vehicles are changing. So start off by saying, what are the limits on vehicles? What are you actually allowed to put on the road? Okay? 5.3 metres high, if anyone fancies a really good view from the top deck. 2.55 wide, reasonable given the lane widths. 12 metres long, anybody? Yeah. So these are permitted limits, and up to 14.25 tonnes, give or take. Those are legally permitted maxima. Fine, we're largely, occasional Hummer accepted, not too close to those. But the trends are quite interesting. Vehicles are getting wider. In Europe, about 1 centimetre every 2 years, which I have a certain empathy with. And in the States, 2.5 centimetres a year. I mean, we know they're more obese than we are, but that's not sustainable by anyone's perceptions. So, what are the consequences of that? Wider vehicles and getting continuously wider. So, 20 years in Europe, UK, has given us an extra 10 centimetres of width on a vehicle. So, there's 20 years ago, 1 lane of parked traffic, 2 lanes of moving traffic. Now, it starts to look a bit more like that. We've effectively lost 30 centimetres of road width. That's actually quite a lot of road we've lost. There we are. What does that do? More friction, lower speeds, more congestion, more nervousness about passing, moving down roads. There are more consequences too. They're getting longer. A couple of inches a year. US data, apologies, but there's a limit to what I could dig out. Queue lengths and number of queue vehicles and vehicle discharge rates. You know, that'll be for me. So our equations have perhaps they need tuning up. Not the Poisson equation that Tobias gave so nicely earlier, but some of our basic traffic equations might warrant revisiting. What effect are these having? And parking as well, bigger vehicles. So same amount of parking space because the roads don't change very much, less vehicles in there, more time spent hunting for parking spaces. Yeah, we all know the story. So that's length and width. Weight bothers most of us. There is an academic link there. There's every reason to believe this is basically true. The wear on the road increases as the fourth power of the weight. So if you double the weight, you increase the wear on the road by 16 times. 16 times wear. That's pretty serious. That's a very age-related little icon. But moving briskly on, here are some trends in vehicle weights from European manufacturers over the last 20-odd years. The black line through the middle is the overall trend line. I invite you to screw your eyes up a little bit and look at what's going on in there. They drift upwards until about 2 years ago. I don't know about you guys, but I think there's a fairly serious uptick in the last 2 years. Yeah? And I would suggest that what we're looking at there is the advent of far more EVs in the manufacturers' fleets, because EVs are heavier. So, in 20 years, the average weight's increased by 20%. So the average wear, because of that background trend, is actually a doubling in the wear. Wear's doubled. So we come back to the nucleus and the rudus on the Fosse Way, because the wear is creating potholes and wear and tear on the road, and you can begin to see, not quite Roman rocks there, but not far off it. And those of you that are of a mathematical bent will have already worked out that your average 1 tonne Kia Picanto is not an issue here. Your 2 tonne Series 3 Tesla, a bit more so. Your 40 tonne HGV, your 44 tonne HGV, bad news. 3.7 million times as much wear as a 1 tonne Kia Picanto. 3.7 million times as much wear. So realistically, that's the problem. It's the large vehicles that do the damage. Electric HGVs are projected to be about 4 tonnes heavier, 9% more. That increased that wear by a further 41%. I didn't do the sums, but it's just over 5 million times compared with the 1 tonne Kia. largely on the arterial network, which we hope National Highways and the devolved government's colleagues have actually designed, DMRB, we heard about it yesterday, to make the roads strong enough to take that sort of beating. So, road life should be good. That's fine, but let's think on a little bit. Buses run across a far wider part of the road network. We've all got them. Even Superloop buses, Michael. And electric buses are also going to weigh in about 10% more than their current internal combustion equivalents. So more and heavier vehicles driving over the same aging road network, and we wonder why we've got potholes. Really, we wonder why we've got them. Yeah? But having the potholes isn't for us particularly the problem. It's someone else's job to find the money, fill them in. But what do they do to our traffic? What do they do to our road capacity? They knacker it. They reduce the width. You're a cyclist, you're going to be out from the curb. Yeah? You see a pothole, you slow down. You know there are potholes, you increase your headway so you can avoid them from the vehicle in front. Potholes are bad news for traffic. So at a bit of a gallop, these are some of the trends in vehicles, things that are outside our control as traffic engineers, but under our control as individual purchasers, where our freedom of choice is actually having an impact on the network and the job we do trying to move our own traffic through it. Okay, so orange light, jolly good. I did look in the paper about energy use and the consumption of energy in vehicles. There isn't time. So moving on, or moving towards the end, doesn't that make you suddenly feel really good about roads compared with the stuff we have to drive on? That green, open, it makes me feel good anyway. In summary, market-driven, vehicles are getting larger and heavier, road infrastructure is static and constrained, so in effect, roads are getting smaller and weaker. Okay? Traffic is getting slower and denser. Sorry, John, I realise that is really a not very cheerful way to round off the last session of the day. I do apologise. We've still got to manage it. And again, because time constraint, I've not mentioned dynamic road clutter, or e-scooters, as they're sometimes known. Thank you for your attention. I'm open to any questions, but as it's usually me that does that, oh, damn it. I've got two down there.
Right, questions? Oh, Chris is in.
Chris Kennett. Yeah, I'll return the favour.
Fine.
I genuinely don't know whether you'll be able to answer this, but I know there's been debate about the use of hydrogen vehicles. It's been contentious, but do you know how hydrogen, say, powered HGVs and buses compare in weight to EVs? And if they are lighter, would this make the case for example, the bus fleet going towards hydrogen instead of full battery?
At lunchtime, I said to someone, when you tread out of your area of expertise, always admit you're treading out of your area of expertise. I'm now about to tread out of I have no idea, Chris, I'm sorry. I imagine they're lighter. I imagine that, in which case, you're right, it would be a good thing to do, but, yeah.
Question, Alistair at the back.
Oh, you okay?
Actually, this was a response to Chris down the front. Hydrogen vehicles, particularly HGVs and plants, companies like JCB are actually producing hydrogen internal combustion engines. So there's no intrinsic difference in weight. So you get all the advantages of zero emissions in the vehicle, but you've got similar characteristics to operating a diesel fleet, and the vehicles are basically the same.
Okay, have we got any further questions? Particularly if they're at the
Are
back.
there any up here while I'm
Yes, I was
here?
going to say at the back would be good.
Mark Roxburgh, National Highways. You talked about the fact that we haven't got control over these vehicles, but I think as you've talked about, there is perhaps legislation opportunities in terms of hydrogen vehicles. What about also about trying to reduce the battery load? If we're investing in bus public transport infrastructure, why don't we invest more in trolley buses, for example, so we can reduce the weight on the vehicle and reduce the need to carry batteries around and therefore reduce damage to our network? Is that something we have control of as highway authorities and we should be thinking about and legislating for?
Just over to here there's an area called politics. Yeah? And I believe Sir Keir Starmer who's currently got some responsibility for that. This will come down to policy and policy directions. You're right, Mark. There are all sorts of things we could do. And it would be interesting to know what, just outside the door that way, Nottingham did to the structure beneath the rails to ensure that the trams that they've got running through their elderly city streets are not causing them to crumble. But there must have been some serious investment. I'm not a civil engineer. In fact, I'm a quite uncivil engineer. Yeah, all I wanted to do here was just make it clear that there are things that are outside of our control as traffic engineers that we don't necessarily think about as we try and design a site, but which are actually insidiously affecting what the traffic is. I think I can turn my mic off.
Is that it? Anybody else? Yeah, you can get away with turning the mic off then. Thank you very much.